All right, let's talk about Angular. It's one of the most powerful platforms out there for building web applications, and it's backed by Google. So if you've ever been curious about what makes this framework tick, well, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. So picture this. You have to build a huge application. I mean, something massive, like an online banking portal or a big internal system for a company. The real challenge isn't just making it work. It's how do you keep it organized? How do you make sure it can grow and not turn into a complete mess of code? That is the exact problem that frameworks like Angular were created to solve. When you start a brand new project, you're immediately faced with a big choice. Do you go with a framework, which is like a complete toolkit, or do you pick and choose individual libraries? These are really the two main paths you can take when you're building a web app from scratch. Okay, let's break this down because it's a really important distinction. Think of libraries like React, for instance, as the do-it-yourself approach. It's like going to the hardware store. You have to pick out your own tools for everything. One for routing, one for handling forms, another for this, another for that. You assemble it all yourself. A framework, on the other hand, like Angular, is more like a prefabricated home kit. It comes with everything you need, all the tools, all the instructions, and it's all designed to work together perfectly right out of the box. And that brings us to Angular, which is the all-in-one kit in our analogy. It's honestly more than just a framework. You can think of it as a whole platform for building apps, and it's maintained by a full-time team at Google. To really get it, you've got to know a little bit of its history. The original version, Angular.js, came out way back in 2009. But then, in 2014, the team decided to do a complete rewrite from the ground up. So, in 2016, they released the new version, and they just called it Angular. Now, this is key. It's not an upgrade. It's a totally different, modern platform that gets new releases like clockwork every 6 months. At its very core, Angular is all about one thing: scalability. That focus on structure and being easy to maintain is exactly why it's such a popular choice for those huge enterprise-level apps, the kind that need to last and grow for years and years. Now, let's talk about Angular's secret weapon. When the Google team did that big rewrite, they made a super important decision. They decided to build the whole thing using a special language called TypeScript, and that gives developers some pretty incredible powers. So what is this TypeScript thing? Well, fun fact, it's actually made by Microsoft, not Google. And the way it works is brilliant. It's what's known as a superset of JavaScript. That's just a fancy way of saying that any JavaScript you already know is also perfectly good TypeScript. It just adds a bunch of extra features right on top. Let me show you a really simple example. So here, we create a variable called fname, and we set it to the word test. Then, on the very next line, we change it to the number 123. Looks harmless, right? Well, here's the crazy part. In normal JavaScript, this is totally fine. JavaScript will not complain one bit. But the problem is, way later in your app, some other piece of code might be expecting fname to be text. But nope, it's a number now, and your whole application crashes. And trust me, these kinds of bugs are a nightmare to track down. But with TypeScript, oh no, it catches that error instantly, right as you're typing. It'll put a red squiggly line under it and say, hey, you can't just change this from a string to a number. This whole concept is called type safety, and it wipes out an entire category of bugs before they can ever reach your users. It is a massive, massive advantage. Okay, so we know Angular is this comprehensive kit built with a safer language. But how do you actually build an app with it? What does it look like? Well, it all comes down to its core building blocks. The entire philosophy behind Angular is built on this one idea: the component. Just think of a component as a self-contained, reusable piece of the screen. It's like a little bundle that has its own logic, its own HTML for the visuals, and even its own styling, all packaged up together. This is where that Lego block analogy really makes sense. You literally build your application by creating these individual components: a header component, a sidebar component, a user profile component, and then you just snap them all together to create the final interface. And because every block is independent, the whole app stays incredibly organized and so much easier to manage. So what does all this Lego building get you from a user's perspective? A much, much better experience. Instead of the old way where every single click forces a full page reload, Angular creates what we call single-page applications, or SPAs for short. It just swaps out the components it needs to on the fly. This makes the whole app feel super fast, fluid, and responsive, almost like you're using a native desktop program. So let's pull all of this together.
If you decide to go with the Angular platform, what are the big advantages? What are the key takeaways?
It really boils down to this. First, it's a comprehensive framework, which means you get everything you need all in one box. Second, you're using TypeScript, which means fewer bugs and cleaner, more reliable code. Third, it's component-based, which makes your app organized, reusable, and super scalable. And finally, the result of all that is a fast, responsive single-page app that just feels great for the user. Look, Angular gives you a very structured, powerful, and kind of opinionated way to build really big, maintainable apps. You're trading some of that freeform mix-and-match flexibility you get with libraries for the sheer reliability and scale of an all-in-one platform. And that leaves us with the big question. Is that structured power the right fit for your next big idea?